Hi, I'm Katherine Bergen,
And I'm Jill Zwetchkenbaum.
and we're going to be discussing the history of Mafalda and its significance in the world based off of the presentation of UCA's Argentina Today by Profesora Munoz.
Sometimes it takes the innocence of a child for people to realize their own foolishness.
The naivety of youth is easy to dismiss, but it often reveals a view of the world that is unburdened by the twisted and ambiguous ideologies of adulthood. In Mafalda, an Argentine comic strip of a 6-year-old girl named Mafalda, of course, who reflects the Argentine middle class and progressive youth while also hating Sue, her signature characteristic, Argentines have found an insightful commentator on social events.
Mafalda first appeared in a comic strip in 1964 when she was aged up 6 years old. Despite this young age, she was a child with a big heart and an awareness of the world around her. She cared about humanity and world peace, and in her own way, she struggled against the problems she saw around her. She asked questions that children usually do not ask, and were not vocalized at all during these days.
She is curious and restless, ironic, and represents the idealistic and utopian inspiration to make a better world. In the comic, she would like to study languages and work in the United Nations to contribute to world peace. She has a turtle as a pet called Bureaucracy because it moves in slow motion. Mafalda loves the Beatles music, at the time everyone did. She loves peace, human rights, and democracy. She also enjoys the cartoon Woody Woodpecker. Her favorite dessert is pancakes.
Yum.
She usually plays cowboys in the park with her friends. And she also, what she dislikes are war, injustice, racism, and of course, soup.
About the author. Mafalda was created by Joaquin Salvador Lavado, but he was better known as his pen name, Kino. When he finished elementary school, he signed in the School of Fine Arts, which he would leave years later because he wanted to draw humor comics. In 1954, he installed in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and started looking for a job.
Now some history about the comic Mafalda. It was first published on September 29th, 1964, but Kino started to work on it in 1963. Initially, it only featured Mafalda and her parents, and it grew from there. Some examples of what happened in this comic. One of her most famous questions was, "Mom, why is there such poverty in the world?" Which was obviously a hard question to answer. Additionally, Mafalda spoke about and addressed specific historical occurrences, including, but not limited to, the Vietnam War, space travels, JFK's murder, human rights, feminism, and she also spoke about things at the time that were going on, such as Argentina being under the military junta and the Cold War.
When she addressed the Vietnam War, she always asked about nuclear weapons, the meaning of life. Once, Mafalda was told to focus on things that girls her age did and spoke about instead of China's communism. In response, she pretends to play with bubbles and soapy water, only to promptly proclaim that she is done playing with the bubbles in the water, and then began to reinstate her China questions once more. Her incisive observations often leave adults at a loss.
There are other characters in the Mafalda comic. She is surrounded, supported, and questioned by her quirky friends. One is Philippe, a smart kid who hates homework and tortures himself for his failings. Another is Manolito, a capitalist kid that always has a scheme. One is Susanita, a frivolous anti-feminist. One is Miguelito, a dreamer and a philosopher. One is Libertad, a tiny kid, the translation being freedom. And her father, who's bent on destroying the ants and eats his prized plants. Guillet, her baby brother, and her mother, who's a housewife. So there's clearly a lot of different people that you would find in society in the comic Mafalda.
And they all kind of interact with Mafalda, help her question things, answer her questions. But a really important question is, how is Mafalda still relevant today? In 1988, Mafalda almost became a citizen of Buenos Aires. It would have been the only comic character to achieve this honor. But according to the law, this title can only be applied to people. The project was justified, saying that Mafalda symbolizes the best of the young people's spirit who are not resigned to abide by the established order, and they want to modify and enrich it with their own ideas. The only attempt to declare her as a distinguished citizen shows the importance of Mafalda in general. In 1995, a square, they came to name Mafalda Square, was established and created. Some of Mafalda's favorite and famous quotes are displayed in the square, including Mafalda listening to her radio. The Pope made a call for peace, and she comments, "The phone was busy as always, right?"
Also, passengers that travel by subway across Buenos Aires can enjoy a mural of 15 meters of Mafalda and her friends in the tunnel that connects the stations Peru with Catedral. In the old neighborhood of San Telmo, in the corner of the streets Chile and Defensa, there is a sculpture of Mafalda sitting in a bank a few meters away from where Kino used to live when he created her. In the entrance of the building, there is the phrase that says, "Here used to live Mafalda."
To celebrate the 50th anniversary of Mafalda in the Embassy of Argentina in Paris, a video was shown and in black walls were painted all the characters of the comic. This was probably an incredible sight for the people in the city. The mini expo, Mafalda, a girl of 50 years, is also shown in Italy, France, Costa Rica. It recreates the environment of life-size, street and home, in all different characters. In marketplaces across Argentina as well, we can purchase anything with Mafalda's face on it, from a mate cup to an apron. Her face is a staple today. Many of the topics featured in the comic strip are also still very relevant today, if not more relevant.
That also brings us to the connection of Mafalda in Argentinian culture to her in other cultures and what it means for U.S. culture. In U.S. culture, we also see many cartoons. Currently, political cartoons are of most importance, especially considering the upcoming elections with such controversial candidates. So often it's a way of cartoonists to comment on the state of U.S. politics today. Mafalda has elements of the early Peanuts, kids who are wise beyond their years contemplating existential conundrums. Another element in Mafalda or potential inspiration was Calvin and Hobbes, a smarty pants kid with a huge imagination and skeptical of the world, as well as Doonesbury, which was biting social commentary.
And after thinking about Mafalda and doing this project, we have a few personal opinions. The comic strips ran from 1964 to 1973 and was very popular in Latin America, Europe, Quebec, Asia, leading to 2 animated cartoon series, which we were able to watch in class, and a book. After 1973, Kino still drew Mafalda a few times, but mostly to promote human rights. In 1976, he reproduced Mafalda for the UNICEF, illustrating on the Convention of Rights of the Child.
Pop culture, especially in our globalizing world, ties together the world, and Mafalda is an example of this. Mafalda, who was known as the little girl who challenged a nation, is an important face of Argentina, deviating from what society constructed. She spoke to a community that needed to question the state of the world, but lived in a time when it was the safest for a fictional child to do the questioning.
And we want to leave everybody with a quote. The writer, very famous Argentine writer, Julio Cortázar, said once, "It does not matter what I think of Mafalda. What matters is what Mafalda thinks of me."